Good evening, children. Thank you for joining us. We're going to be reading you a bedtime story from the book Seb and Polly Planet on their ocean quest. Join Seb as she discovers a solution to plastic pollution with her new superhero friend, Polly Planet. And the book is by Michelle Cassar and the illustrations are by Eve Barat. Are you sitting comfortably? Are you, children? And then we shall begin. Sabrina, known fondly as Seb to her friends, loves splashing about in the sea, pulling crazy faces, secretly staying up late and eating anything that will make her windy pop. She also loves her big sister Charlie, but don't tell her that. Most of all, however, she loves animals, adventures and superheroes. One night, when she was supposed to be asleep, Seb sat up in bed with a new comic book in her hands. She gazed through her open window out across the sea to the bright moon. Seb loved it when the moon was full and it lit up her room. It meant she could read in secret without the light on. Seb was a bit sleepy, but she had just got to the best bit and there was no way she was going to stop reading now. Then, just as her new favourite superhero was hatching her latest plan, she heard a loud creak. Thinking she might get caught, she pulled the duvet over her head and clicked on her torch to carry on reading. Under the covers and clutching her comic book in her hands, Seb closed her eyes and dreamed of joining the superhero. It was just the sort of quest Seb knew she would love. Then she heard a very loud whoosh. Slowly she took the sneakiest of sneaky peeks. Instantly she dropped her torch and sat bolt upright, her curly hair standing on end. Astonished, Seb rubbed her eyes, then rubbed them again. Standing in front of her by the open window was Polly Planet, the new superhero from her comic book. Wearing big old-fashioned flying goggles, her blue and gold cape shimmering in the moonlight, Polly's face broke into a huge smile. Seb stared in astonishment. Polly Planet really does have super special powers. You're from my comic book, stammered Seb. I was just wishing I could join you on your quest. Well, that's why I'm here. Nice to meet you, children. I'm Polly Planet. Are you ready? Are you ready to come on the quest? Come on then, let's go. Unsure if she was dreaming, but always ready for an adventure, Seb nodded her head excitedly. She sprang out of bed and grabbed a jumper from the big pile on the floor. Finally, she was going on a real-life quest. Snapping on her flying goggles, Polly held out her hand and turned towards the window. Hold on, said Seb, reaching for a scrap of paper. I'll just leave a note. Done. Stretching out her hand to Polly, Seb whispered, let's go. Polly skillfully guided him out of the window and they zoomed off into the night sky. Soon they were whizzing over the town, then looping the loop over trees before swooping down towards the beach and out to sea. Everything Seb could see below glittered in the moonlight. It's incredible, she exclaimed. I know, replied Polly, as they headed further and further out over the sparkling ocean. Hold on tight, there's more. They flew all through the night, and just as sunlight was starting to push through the clouds, Seb spotted land. Squeezing Polly's hand, she said, look, there's an island. Are we going there? Yes, that's where we're heading, replied Polly. As Seb and Polly got closer, they joined a flock of huge birds and flew with them. Seb noticed their extraordinary long wings. The magnificent birds glided effortlessly through the air. Then thwack! Seb and Polly Planet landed with a thud, throwing up a big cloud of sand. Seb spat out a mouthful. So why are we here? She asked, as she picked out sand from between her teeth. You'll see, said Polly. Standing up, they shook themselves, both giggling as sand flew everywhere, and Seb's hair sprang out wildly. Look, Seb explained. Thousands of fluffy birds. There are millions of birds living here, Seb, said Polly. The fluffy ones are the chicks of the birds we were just flying with. Chicks? But they're huge and so cute, cooed Seb. And wow, they're very noisy, she said, laughing loudly. Seb noticed there were fluffy chicks as far as her eyes could see, and some even waddled over to peer at her curiously. One looked deep into her eyes. They really were the cutest things she'd ever seen. Continuing their walk along the beach, Seb suddenly tripped over, landing with a rustle and a crunch. What was that? She asked as she brushed her knees. A piece of bright red plastic caught her eyes and she picked it up. Hold on, she said, as she turned her head to look around, her eyes widening. There are lots of bottle tops from the drinks we always buy. Seb's eyes were now boggling. Turning to Polly, her eyes narrowed. Look, she said with a frown, there's plastic everywhere. How did it get here? Crouching down beside her, Polly spoke quietly. Plastic is a clever and complicated material, Seb. Humans use it more than ever, and often it's used just once and thrown away. That's called single-use plastic. A lot of it is brought to the island by the adult birds, who confuse it with food. Plastic also finds its way into the drains and the rivers, which lead to the ocean. Some washes up in the waves, ending up back on land, even as far away as here. Does it harm the chicks? Asked Seb. It does, yes, said Polly gently. Feeling helpless, Seb said, surely something needs to be done. Why can't people recycle? That's what we do at home. Because plastic recycling is not the best solution, answered Polly. Recycling plastic isn't the best solution, asked Seb, surprised. So what is the solution if it isn't recycling? That's what we've been taught in school, she said, crossing her arms and huffing. Ah, you're taught the 3 R's, Seb. Reduce, reuse, recycle. But people tend to concentrate on recycling and they often forget about the really important one, which is reducing, exclaimed Polly. With a big sigh, Seb said, but I'm just one little girl. What difference can I make? Ah, but you can make a difference, Seb, said Polly. I'm going to show you how you can be PALL. Be what? PALL. Pondering the word for a moment, Seb glanced up into the sky. It was full of the birds she'd flown with earlier. She then looked back at the chicks on the beach and all of the plastic surrounding her feet. PALL sounds cool, if it will help the chicks. So go on then. What is PALL? Sitting down beside her, Polly explained the brilliant yet simple idea known as PALL. The following morning, Seb sat up in bed and rubbed the sleep from her eyes and stared out of her bedroom window. Memories came flooding back in a flash. She thought of Polly Planet and their awesome nighttime adventure, flying far away with the graceful birds and meeting all the cute fluffy chicks on the island. Had she been dreaming, she wondered? Seb closed her eyes and remembered all the plastic covering the island. She then thought about all the plastic at home and at school. She knew that plastic being everywhere definitely wasn't a dream. Remembering what Polly had taught her, that recycling plastic was not the best solution, she repeated Polly's words out loud. PALL stands for plastic a lot less. If you try being PALL, you may find out the difference you, one little girl, can make. Standing up, Seb felt determined, and with her hands on her hips and screwing up her face in disgust, she said out loud, "Silly grown-ups, starting today, I'm going to be PALL." And with that, she strutted out of her bedroom. She was hungrier than usual and ready for a huge breakfast. It was Saturday, and that meant outdoor time with her dad and big sister Charlie, playing on the swings, climbing trees and splashing in the sea. While they were climbing their favourite tree, Charlie stood at the bottom and looked up through the branches. How did her little sister always manage to get so high, she wondered. Pretending not to be bothered, Charlie said, "I'm thirsty. Let's get a bottle of water." She turned quickly and started heading off towards the shop. Seb clambered down from the tree and called Charlie back. Remembering Polly's advice, Seb decided to be brave. She caught her breath and swallowed the lump in her throat. She was nervous about having to suggest something new to her big sister, but Seb took a bottle out of her bag and said, "I found this at the back of the cupboard and brought tap water with me. Once we've drunk this, we can refill it." "We can just buy a bottle of water, Seb, like we normally do. Why have you brought that?" asked Charlie. "Because then we don't have to get a plastic bottle, like we taught at school, remember?" said Seb. "Reduce, reuse. We can reduce plastic by reusing and refilling this." Seb's dad smiled, but Charlie shook her straight bob hair and looked down at her younger sister. "Come on, Sabrina, you're just one little girl saying no to one plastic water bottle. What difference can you make?" Then Charlie paused. Looking at her little sister and the bottle in her hand, she had a clever idea. "Oh well," she said, giving a little shrug. "If refilling means I can save my pocket money, I'm in. Give me some." Charlie grabbed the water bottle and took 3 big gulps, wiping her chin. "Thanks, Seb," and headed off to the swings, throwing her sister a cheeky grin as she walked off. Seb had refused her first plastic water bottle by bringing the reusable one instead. Is this what being PALL, plastic a lot less, means? She wondered. Seb and Charlie spent the rest of the day playing in the park, riding their bikes, skateboarding, swinging on the swings, watching snails and petting dogs. Then to cool off, they raced each other down to the beach for their very best part of the day, splashing about in the sea. When they got home, they tucked into some delicious dinner that Seb hoped would make her windy pop, and then she went to bed and fell in fast asleep. Seb slept peacefully, with only the occasional snort and snore, until she was woken by a tapping on the window. Tap, tap, tap. She rushed to open it, and through the window popped the head of 2 giant birds. "Wow, you're bigger than me," Seb remarked. Unruffled, one bird said,
"Do you know what kind of birds we are? Here's a clue. We have a wingspan of over 6 feet long."
They paused, waiting for Seb to answer. She was pretty sure she knew, so she replied confidently, "Are you albatrosses?"
"Yeah, we're albatrosses. Life-saving albatrosses, to be precise,"
said one of the birds.
"We live far out at sea, gliding thousands of miles to find food. We're surface feeders, which means we find most of our food on top of the ocean. These days, there's so much plastic floating on the sea, we gobble it up by mistake. We feed it to our young, who then have no room in their bellies for real food. We are now what humans call endangered."
Seb remembered the island and the cute chicks she'd seen, surrounded by plastic. Ah, she thought, these were the same birds Polly had flown with. Then the other albatross spoke.
"By taking your water bottle out with you and refilling it, there'll be fewer bottle tops on the ocean's surface."
Birds looked at her, tilting their heads.
"Will you be plastic a lot less, Seb, and carry on refilling and saying no to bottled water?"
"Of course, it was easy to refill. I'll be PALL for you."
"Seb, you being PALL will help us eat safely in the future. Thank you."
The albatrosses bobbed up and down with time with each other. They lifted their heads and clacked their beaks. It was a kind of dance. Seb watched in amazement. Then she lay back on her bed, laughing with joy. By being PALL, maybe she really had made a difference to the dancing, lacing albatrosses and their cute, fluffy chicks. Once they'd gone, Seb drifted happily off to sleep. The next day, Seb went out with her mum and Charlie. Seb's feet had grown, so she needed new shoes. She loved chatting with the friendly lady in the shoe shop and hearing her stories of the olden days. As they opened the door, the huge bell that hung in front of it rang loudly. Seb wanted to ring it all day. The friendly lady came over. Seb loved how her face was so wrinkly. Seb thought it just looked like a map. Making sure the shoes fitted properly, the lady used a machine that tickled Seb's feet, making her giggle. When Seb was at the till with her mum, the friendly wrinkly lady went to put the shoe box in a plastic bag. Seb remembered Polly, the cute chicks on the island and the dancing albatrosses who had visited her. Then she had an idea. "It's okay," she said. "I can just carry the box. I don't need a plastic bag, thank you." Her mum and the friendly lady smiled, while Charlie said, "Sabrina, you're just one little girl saying no to one plastic bag. What difference can you make?" Seb picked up the box. "In my day," said the friendly wrinkly lady with a croaky voice, "we never used plastic bags, and I still remember like it was yesterday." Then the big bell rang, interrupting her story, and she shuffled off to greet the next customers. "See you next time," she said, "and I'll tell you all about it." With the big bell ringing on the door, Seb carried her shoebox in her hands and skipped happily out of the shop, and her mum and Charlie followed closely behind. The following night, Seb was woken once again, this time by a splat, splat, splat on the window pane. "What is that?" she wondered. Seb saw a beautiful shiny shell with a head poking out from beneath it. She recognised it at once. This was a creature that had lived in the ocean at the time of the dinosaurs. Using her flippers, the creature managed to heave herself into the room and onto the floor. Splat! She was a leatherback turtle. "Flabbergasted," Seb said. "Wow! Where did you come from? You're almost the same size as my bed." The leatherback turtle said,
We're the largest of all the turtles. I'm bigger than I looked in your picture book, hey?
"Yes, you are," replied Seb. She had known they were big, but not this big. The turtle continued,
I'm lucky. I have lived nearly 100 years. When I was young, the oceans were clean. But now there are so many plastic bags in the sea, and they look just like our favourite food, jellyfish. We eat them by mistake, and now we are what humans call endangered.
Seb remembered what the friendly wrinkly lady in the shoe shop had said about people not using plastic bags in her day. The leatherback turtle looked at Seb with smiling eyes.
Because of you saying no to plastic bags, fewer will end up in the ocean. Will you be PALL for us, Seb, and carry on saying no to plastic bags?
"Of course, I'll be PALL for you," replied Seb. Then the leatherback turtle slapped her flippers against the floor as if she was clapping and saying thank you. Seb laughed. Who'd have thought she'd ever get a cheer from the biggest turtle in the ocean? Getting back into bed, feeling happy and just a little bit proud of herself, Seb thought maybe what Polly had said was true. Perhaps she really was making a difference. And with that, she drifted off to sleep. Later that week at school, Seb was with her friends at lunchtime. She'd had her dinner and was choosing her dessert. As she cast her eyes over the choices, she thought of Polly Planet, the island, the fluffy chicks, the albatrosses and the leatherback turtle. With a newfound confidence, she decided to have an apple rather than a yoghurt in a plastic pot. Her friends were surprised, as Seb always chose yoghurt. Sitting down, Seb explained why to her friends. "Remember what we're taught? Reduce, reuse," one of her friends said quietly. "But Seb, you're just one little girl saying no to one plastic yoghurt pot. What difference can you make?" Seb enjoyed her crunchy apple, quietly thinking about her visitors before rushing to the playground with her friends. Back at home, munching on a special dinner that Seb hoped would make her windy pop later, she told Charlie what she'd done at lunchtime. "You refused a yoghurt, Seb? That's not like you. Was it because of the plastic pot?" "Yes," said Seb. You really do think you're making a difference, don't you? Asked Charlie. Well, who knows? Maybe you are. That night, sitting up in bed reading, Seb noticed the sun was setting, but even with the clouds looming on the horizon, it was still light enough to not need her torch. Suddenly, the room got brighter and she heard a noise, a bit like a wave, then splash! Rushing over to the window, Seb threw it open. In the golden evening light, something caught her eye. There was a large tusk poking out of the sea, right in front of her window. Seb could hardly believe her eyes. Was that a unicorn? She looked closer, and with the tusk leading the way, the creature's body rose and dipped in and out of the glittering water. Seb's mouth dropped open. It was a narwhal. The narwhal lifted his head out of the water, his spiring horn glittering in the setting sun as he spoke.
Some people don't believe in unicorns. We're the unicorns of the sea, living far away in the icy waters of the Arctic Ocean.
As the water is getting warmer, more and more plastic is finding its way to where we live. Fish eat the plastic, then we eat the fish. The narwhal looked at Seb and said proudly,
But because of you saying no to plastic, there will be less of it making its way to the frozen Arctic. Will you be PALL for us and carry on refusing single-use plastic, Seb?
Of course! I'll be PALL for you, Seb said excitedly. The incredible narwhal spun around, twirling his tusk, and as Seb watched, more narwhals joined him in the water. Before long, the sea was bringing in with them, all thanking Seb for being PALL. When Seb clambered back into bed, she had a tingling with goosebumps, knowing that she had made a difference to the lives of the narwhals. She gave a big yawn, and then she drifted off into a deep, deep sleep. The next morning, Seb was woken very early by birdsong and the familiar sound of seagulls. Brushing back the hair that was stuck to her face and rubbing the sleep from her eyes, she was excited to see Polly Planet sitting on a window ledge. I'm thrilled with you, Seb. You remembered PALL, plastic a lot less, exclaimed Polly, beaming from ear to ear. I know saying no to single-use plastic is new for you, but you did it. You kept going. Seb felt very proud and said excitedly, I was visited by albatrosses, a leatherback turtle and narwhals. Each time they came to thank me. Me! Just one little girl saying no and refusing plastics. I couldn't believe it. I remembered what you taught me on the island and I learned a lot from my incredible visitors. Well, now you know what a difference you, one little girl, can make simply by being PALL and saying no to single-use plastics. Why not tell all your friends how easy it is? Urged Polly. Seb felt well pleased with herself. That's a good idea. Seb then looked at Polly and said, Thank you for letting me join your quest. I hope we can fly together again one day. Polly winked and replied with a smile, Maybe we can. Then snapped on her goggles and with a twirl whisked off into the breaking dawn. Bursting with excitement, Seb tiptoed towards Charlie's room. She knew very well who she should share her idea with first.
Well, there we go, children. And wasn't it wonderful, Polly coming back and letting Seb know that by being PALL, plastic a lot less, she really can make a difference. Just her, one little girl. And you can make a difference too. And this is why at the book we haven't called it the end. No, we've called it the beginning. Because this can be the beginning of you being PALL and going out and being a superhero with Seb. We've even put this in the book, look. Oh, it's not there though. I better get the right page. Where is it? Here it is. Look. This is it. We've actually put it in the beginning. You see? Be the beginning of you being PALL. Also, there's lots of other things in the book. Can you see it on my fandangly thing? We've put lots of different things about the animals. Do you remember Refill from chapter 1? That's all in there. And then we also have a place called the Plastic Free Shop. Now, the Plastic Free Shop has lots of things that the grown-ups might need if they're wanting to be PALL. The book is also helping some special organisations that are helping to reduce plastics out in the ocean and doing all wonderful things. Can you see that? That's them there. And then other superheroes and all the wonderful things they've said about the book. Yes, quite a few pages actually of all the superheroes who have said lovely things. Can't really hold it like this. And then there's a lot of thank yous. A long list of thank yous of all the people that helped bring it together. And there's Eve, the illustrator. Look, she's the lady who drew all the pictures. So, we thank you so much for joining us. We really have enjoyed it. And remember to remind your friends so they can go to the YouTube and watch too. And if you see someone saying no to single-use plastics, you can give them a high PALL. It's like a high five, but different. A high PALL. All right, children. Well, thank you very much. And thank you very much. This is the finish. So, good night, children. Click on this like this now. Good night.